This episode is brought to you by Companion. Iris and Josh seem like the perfect match, but when a weekend getaway turns into a nightmare, Iris realizes that things aren't as perfect as they appear. From the creators of Barbarian and the studio that brought you The Notebook comes a twisted tale of modern romance and the sweet satisfaction of revenge. Companion, only in theaters January 31st. Rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent.
Hey Atlanta, Apple is open for small business. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. With privacy and security built in on all devices, it's easy for you to protect your customers' data. And if you need hardware or software support, you'll get advice from business experts at no cost whatsoever. So you can focus more on the soup du jour and less on, the other stuff. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
I was going to say that. I felt like it's doing an ironing film.
Yeah.
Because I think I was doing other stuff, and I tend not to. I tend to put my phone aside and go, I'll leave it in another room. And this one, I kind of go, I don't feel I'm missing much.
No.
Because, I feel that this is all sounding insane. I didn't hate it.
No.
I felt that it's also one way kind of going, it's there. It's just going to be on. You're not going to be particularly you're not going to hate it. It's like the epitome of a 3-star film, really.
Yeah.
Or maybe a 2. But it's in that kind of region where you're going, there's nothing actually obviously appallingly wrong with it, but nothing particularly right with it either.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Today I'm joined by Tom.
Hello.
John.
Hello.
And Helen.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about Nyad. Thank you as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for editing this podcast and all of the previous ones he's done. Please do remember to head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating and a glowing review, and join the conversation with us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod, or if you prefer, on Instagram at Flixwatcher.
Hello film fans, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Our guests today are Tom and John. Over to you please, Tom. Say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hello there. Well, I do a variety of things. One of the things I do in tandem with John and our third colleague, Jessica Regan, is a podcast called Best Pick, which began by looking at every film that won Best Picture at the Academy Awards, which we covered in no particular order. That having been done, I was sort of looking for another project, and so outside of the Best Pickiverse, I decided that a good use of my time would be to watch all of Star Trek. So I watched an episode a day, starting with the original series and finishing, for the time being, with Enterprise. That took 2 years, and the fruits of my labours will be shortly available in book form.
Wow.
Star Trek Discovering the TV series will be out wherever books are sold, probably when this podcast is available.
So what date is that, just in case people do give a look at the watches calendars?
It was supposed to be out at the end of April, but there was some sort of screw up at the printers. So the last date I heard was the 28th of May. But who knows? Who knows?
Is it available for a pre-order anywhere?
It is available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Noble if people are listening in America, from the publishers themselves, penandsword.co.uk, and as I say, wherever books are sold. And the first volume covers the original series, the animated series, and the next generation, and there will be 2 more volumes to complete the journey.
Crikey.
I was a next gen guy because it was on during, when I came back from school. No more reason than that. And I'm overwhelmed by the amount of Star Trek stuff that's coming out at the moment. And I hadn't even considered going back to the start of where, from the beginning. But the amount, Lower Decks, are you going that far? Are you trying to stick with it? Picard?
I decided to end the exercise with Enterprise, which finished in 2005. That was for a couple of reasons. Firstly, going further would mean watching the J.J. Abrams films.
You're not fun.
I will go so far, but I stop at that.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to do was put these episodes into a historical context, and that's hard to do when the shows are still ongoing. So if there is a 4th volume, including all of these Kurtzman shows, many of which I absolutely love, by the way, I think Lower Decks is my favourite, but there's something to be enjoyed in all of them, then that would be a project to be done in a few years' time, but not now.
Sure. John, who are you?
Well, I'm John, and I'm probably best known for writing a one-paragraph review of The Doomsday Machine in Tom's book, first volume. That's one of the more classic episodes of Star Trek Series 2, I believe. That's my main claim to fame, is writing that. Slightly lesser well-known for doing the Best Pick podcast and being sort of technically, depending on how you view it, the most prolific Doctor Who writer of all time. Because never written for the TV series, but written over 100 audio dramas based on Doctor Who with all manner of lovely actors performing them from time to time. And then sometimes I'm an actor as well. So that's roughly what I do. That fills me in.
Well, no, the Doctor Who audio fan fiction family is very strong and very powerful as well. So, yeah, I mean, tell people where we can find them, because it's good for people to know that if they don't know about it already, they can go find it and listen to it.
Yeah, it's bigfinish.com is the company that makes them. There's also, I think, a new podcast out at the moment called Into the TARDIS, which releases them sometimes with advertising, and sometimes if you subscribe, you can get them without advertising, and they're releasing an episode a week. I think one of mine, the first one of mine that's gone there is one called Primord, which is a sequel to a John Pertwee story called Inferno, that's done with at least one actor from the original TV series and some people who sound a bit like them.
Or are relatives of them.
Yes, are relatives. And I think that's probably in about 5 or 6 weeks at the moment. I've slightly lost track of where it is, because I know it's out on the subscriber model, but not on the unpaid one. But yeah, bigfinish.com or some of them on Spotify. They're all over the place. Some of them are on BBC Sounds. Just look up Doctor Who Audio somewhere and inevitably you'll hit mine, because I've written so damn many of them.
Well, we're here talking today about Nyad, which is your choice, John. Can you tell us first of all why you chose it, and then I'll get the timer out, in which you'll have 60 seconds or less to give us the synopsis.
Okay, well, I picked it mainly because I didn't want to pick something I'd already seen. So I hadn't seen Nyad when I selected it. Yeah, and I felt it was one that had been really interesting when the Oscar nominations came out, because obviously both Annette Bening and Jodie Foster were nominated for Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress, I think non-respectively. I think they said them the wrong way around. But so that intrigued me. Also, the fact it hadn't actually been nominated for Best Picture, so you got a couple of really strong performances. So it was one I felt, particularly seeing as we're an Oscar podcast, Tom and I, Best Pick, I felt that it probably was a good one to look at, because I wanted to watch it eventually at some point, so I thought, well, why not that one? And I didn't know much about it either, so yeah, because I think there are so many films, weirdly, having done a film podcast about watching lots and lots of films, it just left me with more films to see.
Yeah.
You would have thought that watching all of the Best Picture winners would have swallowed up a few of them, but no, there are loads that you probably should see. So
it's Pandora's box, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really hard to just justify sitting down and watching a film I haven't seen for ages. And then every night, so this is going completely off piece, but watched, or is it Mark of Zorro, whichever the first.
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yeah, the Antonio Banderas one. Having not seen that in ages, and go, oh god, this is brilliant. They genuinely do not make them like this anymore.
Martin Campbell, isn't it?
Yeah, but that
GoldenEye. Yeah,
but you just, for whatever reason, don't get around. So I was going, I want to watch something I hadn't seen before, and this was high on the list, and also it's quite recent, and
yeah,
I like both of them, so I thought that would be a good one to pick to look at.
So your timer synopsis starts now.
Okay, so this film is the story of Diana Nyad, who, as her name implies, is sort of a swimmer, and at a youthful age was a very well-regarded open sea swimmer who attempted, at I think about age 28, I think it said, to swim from Cuba to Florida. And she didn't manage to make that work when she was 28, and she said at the time it was going to be her last ever swim, and then she just never tried it again until many decades have passed, and now hitting 60, she decides to give it one more go with the help of a boat of various people, including Jodie Foster and Rhys Ifans, and to see whether she can do it. And she's just going to keep on trying over and over again through thick and thin, or thick and swim, if that makes sense, and jellyfish and sharks.
Perfect timing. Helen, I'm going to throw it to you first. What were your thoughts on that? Had you seen this before? John suggested it. What were your thoughts before when he suggested it to us?
No, so I hadn't seen it. The first time I heard about it was when they got their respective nominations, not nominated for anything else, which is always a little bit of a red flag, especially when nowhere near the pictures, or I don't even think it'd even been released, kind of just on Netflix it appeared with one of those really sketchy kind of thumbnails, and you're like, I don't know, guys, you got to give me more than this. Absolutely no idea who she was. And yeah, I mean, we sacrificed Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman nominations for this. So,
well, when I'm going to make sure that when we when we talk about nominations that should have been, I like the way you talked about who you would have preferred to have been in those positions. So, what should they have been nominated for?
Well, obviously, May December got completely ignored, and you could have easily have had. I don't know who is the lead in May December. I would say maybe.
Oh, so you say May December, so Julianne Moore and Natalie Portman for both the same film. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's very much a paint by numbers sports biopic. But if you do a little bit of a Google on Diana Nyad, the thing that kind of comes up is controversy.
Yeah.
And there's basically like a whole controversy that basically she didn't even do it. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, that's juicy. Like, is there any kind of like bits in this where she's like, I was accused of not doing it, but I did it, and tries to kind of write any of that? No. And if you start digging deeper, it's just like loads of lies.
Well, there's this grey area, isn't there? Because the body that today would exist to ratify her swim didn't exist then. So people are kind of making up the rules. And I think they thought what they were doing was good enough. One of the decisions that they made was to drastically cut down the number of support boats depicted, which I think is smart. I think they are very deliberately choosing to focus on the relationship between Annette Bening and Jodie Foster's characters and make that the heart and soul of the film. And so if you have another half a dozen support boats knocking around, that just sort of fogs the issue. So you have one swimmer, one support boat, and you're golden.
2 canoeists, remember.
And the shark pokers as well. Don't forget them.
The shark pokers. And so I think, and obviously all the cameras that depicted her final triumphant stumble onto the Florida shore. So I think they thought they'd done everything they should have done and were quite surprised when the Guinness World Records refused to ratify the swim.
But there's one guy who's particularly into it, and apparently she's made loads of claims about the Olympics not true and other things as well.
Yeah, this is...
He's fessed up about that.
It's like loads of stuff, and she's not a very likeable person at all. Like, Jodie Foster is the most normal person in this film. I mean, sports people don't tend to be that normal anyway, but she's just a very, very kind of unlikable sort of person, and you're kind of like watching her as she's being like stung in the face and nearly dying, and you're just like, just like give it up, like, you know. And she's like, no, and she's just being really mean to Jodie Foster. So there's kind of like all these things going on, but I wasn't really that sold on it as kind of a film. And there's a weird kind of flashback around sexual abuse that is never really explored, but it's just kind of there. And it's like, well, is it something that she's kind of going through, or is it just something that's in her mind when she's swimming, or did they just kind of feel that they needed it in there? So, yeah, I mean, Rhys Ifans is in it and he's playing an American, and it's just a bit like, why would you get him to be an American? There's some strange kind of choices going on that...
Well, acting, surely.
Yeah, but it's just a bit like, okay. There's a few things, and like there's a lot of Diet Coke in there. And not enough sharks. I thought there would have been more sharks for a film where they just talk about sharks all the time.
I will say that one of the things from my limited research on it that I found entertaining was that it's a film which kind of doesn't quite have a massive amount of drama to it, because pretty much from the setup going, I want to be able to do this swim from Cuba to Florida, and you go, we've got 2 hours left, and you start with your first swim about an hour in. I think you're going to make it, because it's based on your book. The only thing that can happen to make this worthy of a film is either you do it or you die, and you wrote a book about it. You're probably alive.
But she could have succeeded at the first attempt. This is my second time watching it, and the first time I watched it, I had not done any research. Like you guys, I didn't really know much about it beyond the title, so I assumed it would be a bit like Wages of Fear, with the story of this harrowing journey.
Yeah, I felt that when she went into the water the first time, and because I was going, there's an hour of this left, this is intriguing, and then it's just, we're just going to keep going until you've done it. But the thing I thought that I found entertaining with it was looking up the details, pretty much as Alan did, of just like not being sure of what was going on. And because the bit in it where we're trying to get you a bit of drama by the shark attack, that doesn't happen. There's a shark that swims towards it and then it doesn't do anything. It just swims away. And here's the thing I found particularly entertaining with that was the fact that they go, so the biggest bit of drama is a shark attack that doesn't happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen in real life. So that's like double didn't happen. Just that trying to sort of like add a tiny bit of a thrill in the middle, going, we promised you a shark. I suppose we should have a shark, don't we? Because jellyfish aren't really picturesque and we don't really show anything. Yeah, I suppose, yeah. You've got
and the Yellow Brick Road and Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, that didn't happen, I'm sure. I haven't researched that bit, but I'm sure the Taj Mahal underwater... Obviously, she was hallucinating at that point, but that didn't happen.
Did it work for you, Kobe?
I mean, the thing is, the reason I didn't watch this before now is because I knew what the story was, only because the film came out, and in the synopsis and press releases about the film, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I know exactly what's going to happen in this film. And I thought at some point I'll get around to watching it, but it always would at best be like, out of 100, it'd be like maybe number 60 on the list of things to watch, unless someone pulled out for Flixwatcher, and this is what happened. So there's no surprise in there apart from the fact that she had multiple goes at it. I thought she might have had one or two, and I was like, okay, so she's got that tenacity thing, that's interesting. A bit of a dick to everyone around her, as portrayed in the film. I love Jodie Foster, and this year, I don't know if anyone watched True Detective Night Country, and I loved her in that, and I thought I'd love seeing her here again. I was like, we need more Jodie Foster and stuff, because she's phenomenal when I've seen her on screen, and we need more of that. But ultimately, it was, I mean, we'll get to the engagement score. It's one of those films which is perfectly fine, and it's a great film to be doing other stuff whilst watching.
I was going to say that. I felt like it's a doing an ironing film.
Yeah.
Because I think I was doing other stuff, and I tend not to. I tend to like put my phone aside and go, I'll leave it in another room, and this one, I'm going to go, I don't feel I'm missing much.
No.
Because, I mean, I feel that this is all sounding insanely... I didn't hate it.
No.
I felt that it's also one way kind of going, it's there, it's just going to be on. You're not going to be particularly through. You're not going to hate it. It's like the epitome of a 3-star film, really.
Yeah. Or
maybe a 2. But it's in that kind of region where you're going, there's nothing actually obviously appallingly wrong with it, but nothing particularly right with it either.
One of the bizarre things about this film is, although you wouldn't necessarily know it by looking at it, it's actually a really big visual effects film.
Oh, right.
Is the sea not real?
There's an amazing YouTube series that's just come out at the moment called No CGI is Really Just Invisible CGI. Now, there are film fans listening interested in this kind of thing. Go look at it. There's this sort of weird cycle that happens at the moment where CGI is getting a bad rap because of dodgy-looking CGI, and so it becomes incumbent on filmmakers and junkets to say no CGI in our film. And then people sit and watch these films, and they go, "Thank goodness they didn't use CGI. It looks so much better." Top Gun Maverick's a good example of this. All those planes are CGI. They didn't have access to those planes. So all the planes you see in Top Gun Maverick are CGI planes. But because the actors flew real planes to get the footage, they're happy to go on TV and say, we didn't do anything with CGI. It's all CGI. Now, Helen, you might have been joking, but none of the sea is real in this. That's all CGI water.
So she's not really swimming?
She's really swimming, but she's swimming in a tank in the Dominican Republic with hardly any swell.
Why the Dominican Republic, though?
Because there was a big tank there. It's a 65,000 square foot tank. It's one of the, left over from some other film. But it would have been absolutely impossible and very, very dangerous to take her out to sea.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So in all those swimming shots, they have to take her out, create a digital double of her in order to get the reflections to work, put in CGI water, and then put her back so you do get Annette Bening's performance in there. But it is remarkable. There's something like, I think there are 10 different visual effects companies who supplied shots for this film. It's a huge visual effects film, and you'd never think to look at it.
I mean, the sea doesn't look real, though. Like, it kind of had that...
I think there are bits of that where it kind of like did the big long pull-out where you're going, nah, I'm not convinced.
It didn't have me thinking about it, so I appreciate that completely. And in the same way with the first Mad Max film, Fury Road...
Yes.
I was like, I don't know how they're doing this. But Furiosa, the second Mad Max film, I know. Guys, I'm joking. Don't worry about it. Furiosa, which I saw recently, where there was so many CGI effects, I was pulled out of it.
Did you see Steven Soderbergh's mini review of Fury Road?
No,
but
Steven Soderbergh said after he'd seen it, he said, having seen Fury Road, I have 2 questions. 1, how are they not still shooting this movie? And 2, how are hundreds of people not dead?
I do remember that, actually. I didn't realise that was a Steven Soderbergh thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Furiosa, you know why there's not hundreds of people there, because there's a lot of CGI action going on here.
Okay, all right. I go to see Furiosa next week. I shall let you know what I think.
Let me know what your thoughts are. The sexual assault thing was interesting because I think it's a Netflix documentary that goes into the sexual assault endemic in the team US gymnastics over the years. So I thought they might, like you said, the way they kind of glossed over it but didn't talk about it was like, I'm not sure why you put it in there. It's either maybe it's a plot point that helps her drive, but they don't really talk about it, or just maybe leave it out and leave that for someone else to discover that and go, oh, that's horrible shit that she went through with her other people, with her other kind of colleagues at the time. And then the fact that they kept on flashing back to this guy and her other teammates didn't really add much to the story. And that kind of felt like I just kept thinking it could be shorter, and I know what's going to happen. But ultimately, like John, I was like, I don't hate it, but just like...
Yeah, I think that the thing that intrigues me with it feels like, and again, this is going back to what Alan said about, the more you look into it, the more seems like there's a more interesting film in Diana Nyad than this one. The actual story of the swim is good, but I think I've mentioned this to Tom before a few times, that I tend not to like sports movies, because the vast majority of sports movies, even if it's like a really good one, like Moneyball, which if I remember right has an Aaron Sorkin script, so it's a really kind of dynamic and exciting one, but ultimately it's about who is slightly better at a game one year than another year. I couldn't give it the tiniest toss. It's and like Ford versus Ferrari. Are we supposed to care because it's Americans versus Europeans? Is that why we're supposed to be that fussed? I didn't care, but I feel that, and so obviously with this having the very obvious shape of where it's going, it feels like that her as a person is much more interesting, at least partially because of the abuse, but also, and you get the tiniest glimpse of this, what you mentioned earlier, it's in the little montage at the end, I think during the end credits, where what's Jodie Foster's character's name? I can't remember. That figure. She is talking at a press conference and she says, yeah, you see, well, there's what Diane tells you and there's the truth. And that bit you're going, oh, no, you've picked that clip to show us.
There.
And that immediately, I think almost anyone with any sense seeing that will kind of go, oh, now I'm interested in, no, this is based on her book. Let's look up her actual life story and see what happens and fight. And that feels like how much of this is mythologizing. I mean, and it all feels like they've just gone for a relatively straightforward
sports biopic.
Well, not even sports biopic, motivational thing of you're never too old to achieve your dreams kind of stuff,
that's
which
what
feels like
the directors went for. They were like, when they were pinned about it, they were said like, oh well, it's not really a true story, but it's a true story about like never giving up on your hopes and dreams. And it was like,
I bet people tend to assume they are true stories, don't they? That's the thing. If it's
on a real person,
it's based on a real person, you tend to assume that. And if also as well, it's always that thing of going, if you're not telling a true story, just make one up. You can do that.
Make up a better story.
It doesn't have to be. Yeah, if this isn't a true story, what's the point of bloody telling it? Have the shark attacker. Actually have a fist fight in a Sharknado if it's not a true story, for crying out loud.
Why make her 60? Make her 90. Then that would be
something. Exactly. Yeah, and have a walk across the water. That's even harder. But yeah, it just feels like there's so much more of an interesting thing you could do with that, as opposed to just that relatively straightforward motivational thing.
For all that we said, though, when I was watching it, I wasn't bored.
No.
Especially not the first time. Second time around was a bit more of a slog. But first time around, I'm very drawn in by the relationship between the two women. I thought Rhys Ifans, although was odd casting, I think he's very good. And I think they did just about managed to pull the trick off of, okay, there's going to be a lot of very similar sequences where we set off for a swim and it doesn't work, and they were able to find ways to just ring the changes enough to keep me watching.
Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
When you talk about sports movies, John, and we'll go to the scores after this unless anyone else has anything to say, I don't mind. I quite like a good sports movie. And randomly, my top 3 sports movies were all baseball films. Like Moneyball was one of them, League of Their Own, and then 43, one with Chadwick Boseman. I was like, randomly, even though I've never ever watched a full game of baseball, these were my top 3 baseball films. But they also tell interesting stories that were in and around it.
Yeah, I think you've got to have interesting characters.
League of Their Own is not about which team wins. League of Their Own is about what happens to these women.
That's the point, yeah.
But ostensibly, it's they're
and also
sports
not
movies,
very true at all.
Yes.
And then along comes Challengers this year, and I'm like, I think this might be my favourite sports movie.
I'm hearing really good things about Challengers. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Makes tennis look great because tennis is fucking boring.
Tennis is great. Tennis is great. It's great. It's great fun watching tennis.
I hate tennis, but I had great fun. So, like, if it can make someone like me who would not want to sit down and watch 2 hours and 20 minutes of tennis, I thought it was great.
I think it's the question of making it about sort of characters and having more to say than just. And I think that can be. Yes, I'm not by no means saying I hate all sports movies. And as I say, basketball is a weirdly strong area. But I think you have to kind of like really narrow it down. It's why I suppose I actually if anything, I quite like this one on the basis of it's focusing on one person. And to be fair, I find this with sport in general. I'm much more interested in like one-on-one sport than I am in team sports, really. But yeah, I feel that it needs a really strong character thing and a really strong sense of what it's trying to say to really be effective, as opposed to, is she going to get across the sea? Yes, she is. We know she is. Like literally from the beginning.
Sports films are quite formulaic. Like if you've watched one, then you've got a pretty good idea going into them, and it's those relationships, or it's the kind of bits that are going wrong that tend to be what are the challenges they're going to overcome, or in the case of like The Fighter, it's just like what's going on in the background with Christian Bale's character. That is the kind of interesting thing, and not the actual sport type stuff.
As a further thought related to that, given it was the main reason I picked this was the actress and best supporting actress nominations, is it worth talking about the performances? Because
absolutely,
because I think Annette Bening is very good. I found I had this weird vibe with this where I thought it's a bit like Bad Boys 2, where you can't help but feel that Martin Lawrence had a really good agent, because Martin Lawrence has top billing still in Bad Boys 2. He doesn't in the most recent one, because they've got at least enough sense to kind of go, but ultimately it's this bit we're kind of going, I feel that if you've got Annette Bening and Jodie Foster in a film, it's the other way round usually.
Yeah.
But not that that's necessarily a problem, because they're both very good in it and they're both doing a really good job. I
was watching this thinking, of course, Annette Bening's top billing because she's playing Nyad and the focus is on her. But this is where often, you guys work in and around actors. You are an actor, John, in that being able to be second on the call sheet and below means you've got a lot more leeway to do more kind of flashy, interesting stuff.
Yes.
And this is where I was like, every time Jodie was on the screen and she was doing the Jodie thing, I was like, I love Jodie. But I also, I really love Annette Bening, but I think she was doing the functional thing and Jodie Foster was doing like not the showy thing, but she was doing the thing that was pulling the camera towards her every time she spoke. And Annette Bening, I loved her in 20th Century Women, for example, a recent film. Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool was probably the last film I saw with her, which I thought she was fantastic in. But it was her, I don't say versus, her and Jodie in this was like, it was the Jodie show, really.
Having her character jump into the sea was Jodie Foster's idea.
Oh,
that didn't happen in real life, but it was a thing that Jodie Foster came up with. Like all the interesting things in this movie. Didn't actually happen.
Like all of the bits that like make it a movie didn't happen. Well, to be fair, this is true because real life is not a movie.
Yeah.
Real life doesn't have a 3-act structure and plot twists and turns, and this really reminds you of it.
I'm never worried about based on true stories being wholly true.
Yeah. I mean, there are one or two of them where I get annoyed where it effectively colours people's perceptions. As I think I talked about on our podcast several times, I get so angry at Finding Neverland, which takes a really interesting and weird story and turns it into like the bloody stupid romance that never bloody happened. And I think the amount of people who think that J.M. Barrie wrote this play there's a love letter to a widow. When you're going to, no, she was married when they met. If anything, he was more interested in the kids, and that sounds dodgy and possibly was dodgy, but that's just way more, but who would have cast Johnny Depp as someone a bit weird? But yeah, I don't mind the gilding of the lily, because as I say, reality and film are very different things. I do slightly dislike it when there's a bit which makes me kind of watch it and go, that didn't really happen though, did it? Because I can tell that weirdly, this one I didn't really get that vibe with either the shark attack and the jumping in the water. Now you've said that, you go, of course. But I remember it's weird, it's like with like good films like the airport chase down the runway in Argo. Yes. You just watch that and go, I bet that didn't happen. Balls, that happened. and pretty much Hugh Jackman's entire character in Eddie the Eagle, who go, you did not exist. Did you? You did not exist.
My question with the shark attack was, do those shark things actually exist? Because I can imagine they fully tempered up for dramatic reasons. But are there literally like buzzers that will literally, as soon as they come on, will make a shark go, fuck this, and like do a 180 and spin off faster than a Benny Hill comedy skit.
You have to get a shark podcast.
Shark
I mean, to be
yeah.
honest, genuinely, they do. The filming of both of those sort of sharks like knocking away is a really weirdly done moment, a bit of dodgy, where you kind of go. So it does make you wonder if they actually had those things. Why not just film using one of them and get this shark to swim towards you and then and bounce it away? Was that cruelty
I think that's
to animals?
To sharks, but
also you wouldn't be able to get them to swim towards you.
It would be a digital shark.
Yeah, of course it's a digital shark. I'm being
Probably.
stupid. Sorry.
Gone are the days when
I
you
should
put
have
a bit of plexiglass between Sean Connery and a shark.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's head to the scores, guys.
I'm Sam Clements, host of the 90 Minutes or Less Film Festival, another podcast in the Stripped Media family, a podcast that celebrates movies under 90 minutes long. Each episode, I'm joined by a special guest who selects a movie to join our prestigious lineup. Past guests have included fellow Stripped Media family members Martin and Sam from Song by Song, and Kobe from Flixwatcher, and Dave from The Wire Stripped. Search for us now on the app you're currently listening to this podcast, or join us at 90minfilmfest.com.
Welcome to the Flixwatcher scores. The scores are always out of 5, and you can have decimal places if we wish. And we'll start with you, please, John, with your recommendability.
I think it's got to be a 3. I think 3 out of 5. I feel that I'm going to be saying 3 out of 5 a lot.
Feels
for
like
this
a 3-star
one.
film.
Yeah, maybe one to watch if in the background. It's worth enough seeing for the performances, but don't race to see it.
Tom.
Yeah, if you're a big fan of Jodie Foster or Annette Bening or Rhys Ifans or Digital Water, if any of these things float your boat.
Yeah, hey. Oh, magnificent. If this wasn't your microphone, I would drop it.
Then this may very well be the film for you, but that doesn't describe it. An awful lot of people say, yeah, 3 seems fair.
Helen.
Yeah, I'm going to hop aboard the 3 boat. I mean, it's...
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine. It's serviceable. We don't get to see Jodie Foster much on film, so it is nice to see her.
Watch Night Country.
It is really long.
Yeah, it's really good.
Oh,
I'm not sure if they managed to wrap it up completely at the end, but the journey was really worthwhile.
But yeah, I will admit, one of the things I did like with this is the fact you've got 2 older women in it playing their age and looking their age, and that being treated as fine, which seems to be a rarity for Hollywood. So yeah, accepting that is a worthwhile, probably knocks it up a tiny bit, but not further than a 3.
I mean, you say looking your age, they were pretty ripped for...
Yeah, but they would be athletes, I suppose. So,
Yeah. They weren't made to... They didn't have cellulite filler, whatever it's called.
Faces made of Botox.
Yeah, exactly.
But, there are other better Annette Bening films where she kind of plays an old woman realising her life like 20th century.
Yeah, Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, guys. Check it out.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for 3.5.
Rocking the boat there.
There you go. Anyone else?
Just tipping it slightly in your direction.
Oh, good Lord. Right. 3. I knew exactly what was going to happen, and it did happen. Apart from, there's a couple more attempts, which I didn't expect. I thought it was going to be attempt 1, fail, attempt 2, do it or die. And yeah, there's a couple more attempts than that, sure, whatever. But it's fine. It's easy to recommend. Should I watch this film? Yeah, watch it. Why not? Have a go. It's fine. And I think I'm putting a notch up for what you said, John. I think it's good to have the 2 lead actresses not being in a romantic entanglement, being themselves, being cranky, and just not having to play up in any way apart from to play the characters that they are. And I think that's a perfectly good reason to watch the film. You just don't see that much. Small screen score I think is going to be quite high, but I feel that it's going to be some quite low scores for the next couple of categories. But let's see. John, repeat viewing score. 1.
I don't feel I'm ever going to feel the urge to watch it ever again. I knew what was going to happen the first time when I hadn't seen it. So I don't think I'd necessarily gain much from seeing it again, no.
Tom.
Yeah, I'm really struck by how much less I enjoyed it second time around. And I think I'm someone who's quite good at watching films second time around.
Yeah.
I don't need that buzz of surprise in order to enjoy a film. But this was a bit of a slog second time through. So yeah, 1.5.
Helen.
Yeah, it's a 1. I mean, she's got a great technique, but 2 hours of just kind of watching someone swim quite slowly is a bit boring.
So, I mean, I think given what you said about she's not a particularly likeable character, and I don't mind that thing about sort of relatability and likability, but it does mean that makes it less of one you're going to rewatch that often. If you're kind of going, well, there's only so many times you want to be annoyed by a character.
Yeah, I mean, if it kind of like dug into a bit more of how people react around that character and kind of fleshed it out rather than just kind of presenting it. I think that's the difference, because you can enjoy films where the unlikable character is kind of challenged or presented in a different way. It's just where they kind of go, yeah, they're just annoying. It's like, okay.
Uncut Gems.
Oh, yeah. To be fair, actually, I would rewatch Uncut Gems.
So was that one, Helen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to join the one that I can't. If it was on, if my wife was watching it and I came in and I wanted to play around on Instagram at the same time, I might as well be in the room when that's happening. A small screen score. John?
Yeah, I think maybe I give it a 4. It's a small screen. I think the visuals are good, not mind-blowing. I don't think you necessarily would need to see them at the cinema. And as I say, given that I think that this film weirdly perhaps benefits from the ability to do other things whilst you're watching it, then it might be better to be not in an enclosed dark room and somewhere where you can just like idly be doing something else. So yeah, I think a 4 probably. As I say, I don't think it's quite. The ocean is sort of inherently cinematic. It's about as big a thing and beautiful a thing as you can find on this planet, and so maybe you miss something of that. But it's quite a small scale film, so I think it only needs a small scale viewing experience.
Tom?
Yeah, I think on the one hand, the fact that a lot of it is about what's going on in the faces and behind the eyes of the lead characters means that TV is quite well suited to it. On the other hand, I think that the benefit you get from being in the cinema is there's nowhere to go, and so you're kind of stuck on the journey with her, and that probably would have helped ramp up the tension a bit. So that probably works out as a 3.
Helen?
This kind of feels, had it not had like the star power, this is very much like a made-for-TV kind of film for me. So I think I wouldn't have gone to the cinema to see this. But yeah, like you said, Tom, like I think had we watched it in the cinema, we might have been more engaged, but watched it at home. So I'm going to give it a 5 for this.
That having been said, this is just reminding me now of the film 13 Lives, which is another swimming film, and one that I hadn't seen until... I don't think it's on Netflix. I think it's on another provider. What? But I've only ever seen it on TV, and I was completely hooked. And if you asked me if I wanted to go and watch that again now, I would say yes. Sack all the rest of the podcasts, because that's an incredible film. And although it has star power, because it's got Colin Farrell and Viggo Mortensen in it, actually their personalities are not really what the film's about at all. It's just about doing the thing. But the thing is so extraordinary.
I loved it as well, even though I know there's people who are like, you shouldn't watch this, you should watch the documentary. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I loved their Brummie accents as well. I thought they were fabulous.
Yes, very convincing Brummie accents.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking, just going back to Rhys Ifans of it all, what was it about Rhys Ifans doing an American accent that put you off, Helen? Because, I mean, for me, that's just like acting.
No,
I mean, at first I was like, is that Rhys Ifans? Oh, it is Rhys Ifans. Oh, interesting. Good. And then, but when I first saw Ewan McGregor do an American accent in Big Fish, I was like, I don't understand. Okay, good. But I felt like...
Rhys Ifans does look, especially in that kind of hair and makeup, he does look weirdly like the real guy who you see briefly at the end. So one of the odd things about this movie, sorry to just derail us briefly, but they do the thing that movies like this very often do, which I actually rather like, where they show you all the real people at the end. But there's also a lot of real footage at the beginning and throughout.
Yeah, I thought that was ballsy.
Which is very weird. There's mixed in, there's just one shot of a de-aged Annette Bening when she's talking to camera and she's watching herself on an old videotape, and they used a de-aged Annette Bening for that because it was Annette Bening watching Annette Bening, and they thought it would be weird to have the real Diana Nyad at that point.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I think there were some scenes where it looked like a super like high 8 early digital bit when she was swimming, and I was wondering if that was from the footage of her actually swimming.
Yeah, I think it would have been.
But yeah, I had no problems with him playing an American guy.
No, it wasn't that. It's just they could have just got an American guy.
Who would you have cast?
Well, I was kind of looks a little bit like Owen Wilson looks a little bit now.
Oh yeah,
maybe
that makes sense.
Yeah,
maybe he was too expensive, and they went, "Who looks a little bit like him?"
He's always a bit too laconic, isn't he? You just wouldn't imagine he'd be that fussed. He'd just be relaxed a bit on the boat, wouldn't he?
Owen Wilson's got Marvel
fishing.
money now, so he's
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, he's fairly kind of energized in Loki.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Engagement score, John.
Well, I think pretty much given away. It's probably going to be a 2, isn't it? I think. Yeah. I think that it comes back to the thing of it's a background film that I just wasn't drawn in enough that I could stay away from the devices. That's at least partially on me and my ADHD brain. I should lock these things away. But it was a bright and sunny day, and there were work emails and stuff, and I wasn't doing anything. I was still focusing on watching it, but yeah, it wasn't grabbing me in. I think given that, as we've all said, you kind of knew where it had to be going. It didn't feel like there was a massive compulsion. At the same time, I did watch it straight through, and it didn't feel like the worst 2 hours of my life. So I feel a 1 would be overly harsh, but I'll go with 2, I think.
Tom?
Yeah, I might just nudge it up to 2.5. I think they are faced with a difficult task. I'm reminded of the story that William Goldman tells about hearing about the guy who was trying to bag this terrifying man-eating, I want to say tiger, could be lion.
Isn't it that film that he did?
It was eventually filmed.
Ghost in the Darkness?
Yes, yeah, exactly. But he heard the account, the account is incredibly gripping, but the story is a guy up a tree for 3 nights. I can't make that dramatic. There's nothing for me to point a camera at.
Yeah.
And some people would say the resulting film bears out the wisdom of that. And similarly, the challenge you've got is it's just somebody swimming until she isn't, or till she gets there. But I think they do a decent job of bringing the changes and making that work. So I can't. It's 4, and second time around it was a slog. I think I'll go 2.5.
Okay, not another stop at 3 Town.
Yeah, so it's a 2 for me. I was kind of in there to begin with, and then we kind of I was watching it with Rhys, and he went, "Oh, I know this story." And I was like, "Oh, what's the story?" And then once I started that and went down a Wikipedia hole and then Googled a couple more articles and then somehow ended up reading the reviews for The Young Woman and the Sea, which is a Daisy Ridley film about an English woman who did do a long swim, and ended up reading all the letterbox reviews of that, and they were all like Nyad, but if it was real. And I ended up getting quite into them. And then I had a look on Vinted for some stuff, and then she was still swimming. And then
still the first one as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of wanted to be more engaged in it, but it's just one of those that you can not really watch it and get an idea of what went on too.
I'm going for 2.75. I knew it was going to happen, and it happened. Lovely. Fun time was had by all on Instagram that day for me. So it gives an overall score of 2.70313. A bit harsher than I thought it was going to be, ultimately, but,
yeah,
fine.
I feel slightly bad about that, but no, yeah.
Because you love Jodie Foster and I love Annette Bening, and I wanted to do well, so, but...
Yeah.
Them's the breaks.
I feel like I didn't hate it as much as I think it sounds like I did. It was, that feels slightly bad.
There's just so many things you can watch these days.
Yeah,
and so I think that does make us judge things maybe more harshly than we've done.
Yeah.
If there were 3 channels, this came on a Saturday afternoon, I think you'd be very happy with yourself.
Absolutely,
100%. Yeah.
It's the opportunity cost of watching other films.
I remember thinking that, when going to Australia once and listening to a David Gray album and falling asleep, and feeling there's something to be said for a film that you can sit down on a sunny day, put on, and if you fall asleep, you've not missed out much on much. You know what the ending was because you've had a lovely sleep.
I can't remember who it was. It might be someone like Tom Crawley, who you might know from Doctor Who times. But Doctor Who audio stories, but I think it was him, but it might be someone else, brought on the concept of the napper film, where you could put it on and quite happily nap during it and then wake up and, we're still going, perfect. I'll just catch the end. I think that tended to be for films he'd seen before quite a lot and would just knew exactly what was happening. But this for me is like a napper for a first time watch. It's a napper.
I mean, genuinely, you could fall asleep about an hour in. Miss 50 minutes of it and wake up when she stumbles onto the beach and not realise you've not seen the film. You think, that's a shorter film than I expected it to be.
Sounds of
that
the
went
ocean
really quickly.
Can be quite soothing as well, can't they?
Yeah. give that 5 stars. Really, really fast-moving film. It really was zipped by.
Tom, John, can you tell us where we can find you guys online, and we'll say goodbye to the listeners?
I think I'm various places as either. I think I'm on Twitter as Mr. John Dorney, and I'm on Instagram as I think Terry's dead now for reasons too complicated to explain. Yeah, I think that's where I'm generally located.
You can find me at Tom Salinsky on Twitter, or tomsalinsky.co.uk/blog for reviews of various things, including Star Trek, including Doctor Who, including Oscar films. And the best pick is sort of in abeyance at the moment. I hijacked the feed in order to ask various people what they thought of various Star Trek films in a shameless act of self-promotion. But there might be other stuff coming along as we feel like it, and we'll still be doing our regular Oscar roundups, as well as, at some point, a review of Oppenheimer.
Yay.
And that's at bestpickpod.com.
I do like it when your feed wakes up.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh shit, there's a new Best Pick episode. Yeah, guys. Also, you've got 2 books. You've got the Best Pick book as well, which you can get on Amazon and all good book places, I imagine.
Also, most excitingly, you can buy it in the Academy Museum in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Amazing.
Which I stood by. They've got an entire cupboard full of them, which at one point I can't figure out whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
And they have some of the very rare unsigned ones.
Yeah. I did very nearly ask if I could sign it in the book. In the book, and I thought, that might be a little bit ostentatious.
So you can buy that book, and what's the name of your Star Trek book again, Tom?
It's called Star Trek Discovering the TV Series, and it will be out soon.
Guys, if you're interested in Star Trek and want to read about Tom's journey through the original few series, then please Google it or check on Amazon right now.
Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Thanks very much for bringing Nyad. I probably wouldn't have got around to watching it forever, so it's been momentous.
Thanks for
having
coming
us.
on.
Bye.
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 Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes, and Rockwood Audio's editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.